Hello, I'm McKensey. I'm the incoming District Treasurer for 2020, 21 and 22. I'm not an accountant. I'm a retired electrical engineer who happens to have an MBA. But as a result, I was a church treasurer for 23 years and I've been a Rotary treasurer for 17 years. So I probably know enough to tell you what you need to know. I will be talking to you about your roles and responsibilities, the accounting function you'll be carrying out, dues for RI, district and RDU, the regulatory environment in which you're working, tax issues which are minimal, board reporting, which should be done at least 4 times a year, but preferably once a month, auditing, AGM and returns, and the handover of the Treasury function. Start trying to get a replacement for yourself now, because sometimes it can be difficult. The roles and responsibilities of a treasurer. These are to receive and issue receipts for all monies that are received, to deposit all funds into accounts as nominated by the board, and there will usually be at least 2 accounts, carry out a bank reconciliation on all bank accounts at least once a month, where monthly accounts statements are available, and once a quarter for investments. Pay all bills on the basis of board approval or budgetary approval. By budgetary approval, I mean that the budget contains a line item pertaining to the expenditure, and the expenses after that expenditure is paid will not exceed the budgeted amount, except in the case of donations, which should always be taken to the board before they are paid. You are required to collect dues from all members, to prepare a club budget jointly with the board members. That means you prepare the budget and the board members amend it to suit the projects that they believe the club will be carrying out. Cheques are to be issued with 2 authorised signatories. I recommend that you have at least 4 to allow for the fact that people are not always available. Prepare your accounts and record for audit. The end of the financial year is the 30th of June. You should aim to have your books with the auditor by the end of July, because sometimes auditors, particularly if they're doing it on a pro bono basis, can take some time. Keep historical accounting records in safekeeping for at least 5 years. With bank accounts, you are obliged to have at least 2 bank accounts. One for monies received from club members and used for the administration of the club, and the other for monies received from the public in relationship to projects and paid for payments for the expenses associated with projects. Again, all accounts need to be signed by at least 2 authorised signatories. EFT is recommended, but only if dual authorising is available from the bank you're dealing with. At the moment, ComBiz and Bendigo Bank both provide good dual authorisation facilities. Where you're using EFT, make sure you have an appropriate virus protection on the computer you're using. Investments that are made by a Rotary Club must be approved by the board. These will usually be in the form of term deposits and other interest-bearing instruments. Be careful with term deposits. If you don't go to the bank when they send you a renewal notice, you will get the lowest interest rate available. If you go to the bank at the time of renewal, you will get an interest rate which is slightly higher. Handle all finances as though they were your own, but don't treat them as your own. Budgets and accounts. Separate budgets and accounts for admin and project accounts. I've said that before. Budgets must be approved by the board, and they must show income per event or activity and expenses per income per event or activity. Budgets to reflect the avenues of service. There are several user-friendly software packages available for bookkeeping. However, you'll probably be inheriting that from your previous treasurer. The most common ones that have been used by clubs are MYOB and Quicken. If you haven't got a software package, I strongly recommend that you get one. And if you want one which is inexpensive, there's an Indian Manager IO product available, which has no charges for the desktop version. It will not handle GST, so you need to be a tier 1 club. Cash management. Maintain good internal controls. That means that when cash is received, it should be counted before being passed to the treasurer. So the treasurer can issue a receipt. If he's got any sense, he'll count it again. Cash should be not held at home, but should be banked at the earliest opportunity. Issue receipts for cash. You should issue receipts for all monies received. This can be in one of two forms. It can be by either issuing a receipt specific for the amount of money received, or in the case of dues, by sending an updated copy of the invoice that indicates the invoice has been fully paid. Have attendance sheets at meetings to record all income received. With small clubs, this may not be as important, but with clubs of between 30 or more members, if you're having a dinner meeting and you're handling money from fines, from raffles, you're paying for dinner meals as a club, all monies received from the members should be recorded by the various classifications. A good practice is to keep cash payments to a minimum. That means if you receive money from members at a function, you should not be paying the venue from those monies, but you should be paying the venue by cheque or by EFT and banking the monies received. Bank all funds promptly and do the paperwork at the same time. Accounting functions. All payments require at least 2 board members to authorise. Prior board approval for major payments. I would suggest that you should have in your club procedures a limit on the amount that can be approved by an individual officer without referral to the board. It's important that for all donations that the board approve even budget items. Cheques and EFT require 2 signatures. A practice which has not been carried out by my own club is that all recipients should sign for cash reimbursements. as these are done by EFT, an acknowledgement by email would, in my opinion, suffice. You should report to the board every month giving details of all payments made. If you are using cheques, the cheque numbers should be written in the accounting package. Now talk about the annual dues. These are figures on this transparency are annual figures, but the dues are paid semi-annually. The RI fee is in US dollars and it has to be converted into Australian dollars at an exchange rate determined by RI. This rate is published each month and can be found in my Rotary. The rate you should use is not the month when you got the invoice, but the month when you pay the invoice. District fees this year are $110 or $55 per half year, which with GST comes to $60.50. The RDU magazine subscription is $34 including GST if you take the digital edition, and $44 including GST if you take the printed edition. How are the fees calculated for each club? Well, the RI fees and district dues fees are based on the number of members in the club at the 30th of June or the 31st of December. However, the dues for the RDU magazine are based on a separate database maintained by RDU. You can gain access to that by contacting subscriptions at rotarydownunder.com.au. This database needs to be maintained as well and should be updated probably in November and in May to ensure the invoices issued by RDU, which come out before the end of the financial year, are close to being accurate. RDU will adjust their invoices after the end of the financial year. RI and district will not. The regulatory environment in which you work is covered by a number of entities. First is New South Wales Fair Trading, which used to be called Gaming and Racing. All members, all Rotary clubs are independent incorporated associations registered with New South Wales Fair Trading. The Rotary International Manual of Procedure lays down rules regarding the behaviour of club officers, accounting practices, a range of things. And your club constitution should be a club's constitution identical to that prescribed by RI, but amended for the local legal situations. Gaming and racing legislation, which is New South Wales Fair Trading now, regulates fundraising activities. And if you're going to earn more than a certain amount, you should have an authority to fundraise. Before you become concerned about this issue, I would suggest a visit to the Fair Trading website, and a review of the application forms will tell you very quickly whether you need to have an authority to fundraise. Most clubs that are raising less than 15 to 20,000 a year from the public will not need one. Income tax. Rotary is exempt from income tax. ABN. Each club must be registered it is good practice to quote your ABN on all financial documents, but if you're not registered for GST, to put near the ABN, not registered for GST. This avoids the misunderstanding which you can understand with donors, etc., when they find they cannot get a refund for the GST paid to a included in whatever they're paying to a Rotary Club. GST. A club must register GST if its turnover is over 150,000 per annum. There are some clubs in the district which are in that situation, but unfortunately not many. You cannot issue a tax-deductible receipt unless you are registered as a deductible gift recipient. This is part of the charities legislation and is administered by the Commonwealth. Board reporting. All payments you should report all payments and point out to the board any substantial matter. A board should approve all payments. In effect, they do that by approving the accounts as they've been submitted to the board for each board meeting. The reports to the board include the balance sheet, which shows the current bank deposits and previous balances. The report should show the gain or loss on admin and project activities. In most cases, the report will show the income and the expenses for each item of the budget as separate entities on the P&L. Attention should be drawn to variances between the actual expenses and budget expenses. If you have significant investments, the yield on those investments should be reported. Each month, the board should be made aware of outstanding accounts receivable and accounts payable. As treasurer, you may have inherited a significant quantity of records. You should cull those so that the records you are holding do not exceed 7 years, but do not throw out anything that's younger than 5 years. You will need to hand over to the incoming treasurer the responsibilities for administering the club accounting software early in July or early in January. You should take an image of that before you hand it over to allow you to make changes that are necessary for any audit. Those changes should be notified to the new treasurer so that the current live image of the accounts are corrected. You should arrange prior to the end of the financial year for the incoming treasurer to be a signatory, and in some cases both an incoming president or president and president-elect. After you've done all that, you've got to clean up the reports in the accounting system to go to the auditor. It's important to note that if you are a small club with turnover less than $250,000, you are what's called a Tier 1 entity, and as such do not have to have your accounts audited. But it is a very good practice to do so, and we would recommend that if you can achieve audit without great expense, you should do so. if your accounts are not audited by a qualified auditor, they can be qualified. They can be reviewed and approved by 2 Rotarians who are not members of the board. Supplementary reports or reports on individual projects may also be submitted to the AGM. The public officer is required by law to have copies or access to copies of the accounting record at any time. It is preferable that the public officer maintain a source of financial reports that can be given to members or members of the public, for that matter, who are seeking access to them. The public officer is required to lodge the annual return, Form 12, with the New South Wales Department of Fair Trading within 28 days after the AGM. The AGM must be held within 6 months of the association's financial year end. Rotary says by the end of November, so you should be aiming for by the end of November. If you have any questions, and I can't answer them on this Zoom session, please send your questions to ianmckenzie@me.com or call me on 0438 845 921 between 9 AM and 9 PM on a weekday. Thank you.